How have you helped someone without embarrassing them? I'll never forget this one night in college because it taught me a lot about kindness and how sometimes the smallest, quietest gestures can matter the most. It was close to midnight, and I had just left the library after a long cram session for an exam. The campus was quiet, just the faint hum of vending machines and the squeak of my sneakers on the pavement. As I cut across the courtyard toward my dorm, I noticed someone sitting alone on a bench under one of the lamps. I recognized him. He was in one of my classes. He was the kind of guy who never caused trouble, never spoke unless the professor called on him, and usually sat tucked away in the back row. That night, though, he looked different. His shoulders were hunched, his head was low, and even from a distance, I could see him rubbing at his face. I don't know what it was, but something about the way he sat there made me slow down. It wasn't just someone chilling outside. He looked defeated. I could have kept walking. Honestly, part of me wanted to. I was tired, I barely knew him, and I didn't want to intrude on something that seemed private, but I couldn't shake the thought that maybe he needed someone, anyone, in that moment. So instead of passing by, I stopped a few feet away and said his name softly, like I didn't want to startle him. He jerked his head up, and instantly I could see he'd been crying. His eyes were red and watery, his face blotchy, and in that split second, I watched the panic flash across his expression. He tried to laugh it off, mumbling something about allergies, then looked away like he hoped I'd believe it and leave him alone. Here's the thing. If I had pointed it out, if I had said, "Are you crying?" or "What's wrong?" he would have shut down completely. He clearly didn't want to be exposed or pitied. So instead, I sat down beside him like nothing was unusual. I dug into my backpack, pulled out a pack of cookies I'd picked up earlier, and held it out to him. "Man, I bought too many of these," I said. "Help me out before I regret it." That broke the tension. He let out a small laugh, kind of surprised, and took one. We just sat there in silence for a few minutes, munching on cookies like it was the most normal thing in the world. No pressure, no spotlight, just two people sharing a snack under a campus lamp. Eventually, he started talking, not about whatever had made him cry, not directly, but about how stressed he was, how classes felt impossible, how he was overwhelmed by everything. I didn't push. I didn't ask, "What's really wrong?" I just nodded, threw in a couple of jokes about how awful our professor's monotone voice was, and let him steer the conversation wherever he wanted it to go. By the time we got up to head back to the dorms, his whole energy had shifted. He looked a little lighter, a little less weighed down. As we walked, I said casually, "Hey, next time you're stuck studying late, hit me up. Misery loves company." He smiled, said, "Yeah, maybe," and that was that. But here's the part that stuck with me. The very next week, he actually did. He slid into the seat next to me in class, something he'd never done before, and whispered a sarcastic comment about the professor's tie. From then on, we started hanging out more, slowly becoming friends. Months later, he admitted that the night I found him on that bench had been one of his lowest points. He said he'd felt invisible, like no one cared, and that the simple act of me sitting with him and treating him normally instead of making him feel broken had meant everything. That conversation has lived in my head ever since. Because the truth is, helping people doesn't always look like swooping in with some huge rescue plan or giving motivational speeches. More often than not, it looks like being subtle, being gentle, and protecting someone's dignity. Since then, I've tried to be mindful about how I help others without making them feel exposed. If I notice a coworker skipping lunch because money's tight, I'll forget my lunch and suggest splitting takeout. If I see a friend struggling to carry something heavy, I'll say, "Hey, I was heading that way anyway. Let me grab one end." If I know someone might be too proud to accept outright help, I'll frame it as if they're helping me. It shifts the balance. They feel useful instead of pitied. I think back to that bench night a lot because it showed me that embarrassment is sometimes the biggest barrier between people and the help they need. No one wants to feel like a project or like their weakness is on display. They want to feel human, equal, respected. And if you can give them that, if you can weave kindness into something so ordinary it doesn't call attention to their struggle, then you've truly helped them. For me, that night wasn't about sharing cookies. It was about sharing space, about quietly saying, "You're not alone," without making him feel like I was doing him a favor. And judging by how our friendship grew afterward, I think that's what he needed more than anything. Sometimes the most powerful kindness is the kind that no one else notices, the kind that leaves a person walking away not embarrassed, not indebted, but simply a little more okay than they were before.